Good Tuesday morning. Welcome to Squawk on the Street. I'm Carl Quintanilla with David Faber, Mike Santoli here at Post 9 of the New York Stock Exchange. Kramer has the morning off. Futures fairly steady as consumer retail earnings kick off this week with Home Depot. And a decent diet of news on mega cap tech. NVIDIA, Intel, Apple, Palo Alto. We'll get to it. Housing starts were good, but permits down for a fourth straight month. Our roadmap begins with Intel getting this $2 billion investment from SoftBank. The Trump administration reportedly also weighing a stake in the chip maker. Commerce Secretary Lutnick's going to be with us in just a few moments to talk about that, trade, and a lot more.
Home Depot misses earnings estimates. That's the second straight quarter it's done that. It is sticking with its outlook. We'll keep an eye on that stock. And NVIDIA reportedly working on a new AI chip for the Chinese market that outperforms the H20. This coming as OpenAI CEO Sam Altman warns about China's next generation AI threat.
Let's begin with these stories about Intel and these stakes. There's the SoftBank side, Mike, and the government side. And, of course, the Journal op-ed page talking about the nationalization of Intel, as they put it.
Right, with these reports in particular that perhaps the stake from the government in Intel is being contemplated as essentially converting the CHIPS Act grants that were earmarked for Intel into it, as opposed to a new infusion of capital. I know the details are not yet set. $2 billion from SoftBank. I mean, I don't know if that's a good thing that the stock is up 6% on a $2 billion investment. It's like 2% of the company. Intel spends $25 billion annually already on CapEx. So in other words, what moves the needle here, changes the story in terms of manufacturing capacity, having a market for whatever it does build, or as has been reported, SoftBank much more interested in kind of the chip design side of Intel, obviously with the big holding in ARM. So interesting that it's in play along multiple fronts here, and the stock is, as you see on that chart, kind of kicking around these levels for quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, there does seem to be some, and it's funny, I picked this up, and, you know, there's a lot of dinners that occur out in Long Island now, because everybody's out there, that there seems to be at least a hope that the turnaround of Intel is a possibility, and there may even be some investors who are willing to actually climb on board for that. You can see the month to date. But to your point, Mike, it's a long way to go, and certainly $2 billion is not going to change the story at all in terms of, it is new equity, by the way, just making the point. It's not like SoftBank's buying on the market. They are buying new equity, so 2%, you know, dilutive as well, potentially, but to a small amount.
What was it, at 24 or 23?
Yes, at 23, I think, right? A little, a little lower than where the stock is, but in that range. But to your point, the bigger question, and one obviously we'll spend some time with Commerce Secretary Lutnick on, is what exactly are the plans the U.S. has for the money that has been promised Intel, not yet delivered to them under the CHIPS Act, and what is going to happen in terms of whether that becomes equity. And then, you know, you got any number of people who weigh in on the basic theme that, listen, and Stacey Raskin, a frequent guest here, the lead semiconductor analyst over at Bernstein, talking about, you know, the goal is to help Intel build substantial U.S. capacity. $10.9 billion from the CHIPS Act's not really enough. And he still wonders how much force the administration can or needs to bring to actually deliver products that can meet spec and on time and find customers.
Right.
Because that's the part. Like, and you know, the Treasury Secretary talks about our dependence on Taiwan Semi, and it's true, and it is potentially a national security issue, hence the CHIPS Act. But the question, Carl, becomes, can you force them, being customers, to actually come to Intel to buy the chips from them?
Yeah. Stacey also says companies recognized about $2 billion in CHIPS Act grants to date, and you could argue that given the delays, they probably were going to get the rest anyway. Let's talk more about the possibility of this government stake with the Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, who joins us, I believe, this morning from Washington. Morning, Mr. Secretary. Good to see you.
Good morning. Nice to see you guys.
Can you help us understand sort of the calculus behind this move?
Sure. So for national security, we need to make our own chips here. We cannot rely on Taiwan, which is 9,500 miles away from us and only 80 miles from China. So you can't have 99% of leading edge chips made in Taiwan. We want to make them here. So that's a key part of our initiative. That's part of the deal we did with Japan. That's part of the deal we did with Korea, to have the infrastructure and economic capacity to build those chips in America And of course, one of those pieces is it would be lovely to have Intel be capable of making a U.S. node or a U.S. transistor, driving that in America. That would be lovely. That's not necessary, but as I said, that would be a really good thing to have, would be American participant in the semiconductor space.
So, Mr. Secretary, how do you view then the CHIPS Act funds that have yet to be committed but have been promised, and the idea that that might be then converted to an equity stake? Is that how we should view it, that ultimately that's what you're talking to Intel about right now?
Yes. I mean, the president figures out that America should get the benefit of the bargain. I mean, that is exactly Donald Trump's perspective, which is, why are we giving a company worth $100 billion this kind of money? What is in it for the American taxpayer? And the answer Donald Trump has is, we should get an equity stake for our money. So we'll deliver the money, which was already committed under the Biden administration. We'll get equity in return for it, get a good return for the American taxpayer. Instead of just giving grants away, Donald Trump views we should get benefits for the economics that we put out.
Yeah, I love your response then to, I mentioned this analyst, Stacey Raskin, because he's written on it. He's one of the top analysts who follows this company for years. He says that we note the company's recognized $2.2 billion in CHIPS Act grants to date, and suppose one could argue that given the delays, they probably aren't going to get all the rest anyway, that being another $8+ billion. Nevertheless, trading 10% of the company for what it now seems worse than the prior agreement, in which basically they were getting the money for free. Do you not put Intel in a better position?
Of course it's worse.
Do you not put them in a better position to compete? Is that, should that be a concern, since you want them to be the competitor you described earlier in terms of a U.S. champion?
Look, the CHIPS Act was just a giveaway to rich companies. I mean, why in the world is the United States of America taking money and giving it to companies like TSMC, which is worth $1 trillion? I mean, why would we give them money to come to America? Donald Trump understands how to do this. What he does is he says, if you don't build in America, you're going to pay a 100% tariff, and then watch them come flying in. So the idea is, let's change with respect to Intel. We want Intel to be successful in America. Okay? We'd like an American transistor built in America, right? We'd like an American to be doing that. So Donald Trump says, hey, look, let's turn the money that Biden was going to just give away and turn that to equity for the American people. Yes, it is a worse deal than giving it away. But when you put this money in the hands of Donald Trump, you're going to get a better deal for the American taxpayer. That's who Donald Trump is, and it's obviously the right move to make.
Well, all right, it may be obvious to you. Do you get governance here? By the way, once you're in for 10%, do you have to go in for even more?
No. Come on.
No, what?
Come on, stop that stuff. It's not governance, right? We're just converting what was a grant under Biden into equity for the Trump administration.
I get that.
I get that.
I just asked if you're going to get governance. You're going to own 10% of the company. You don't. Why wouldn't you want some
non-voting?
Okay.
No, stop. Don't overdo it.
Well, I'm not overdoing it, but you got a golden share on U.S. Steel, so it's not like impossible to imagine that you do want some level of governance here if you're going to put 10% of taxpayers' money into, or 10% of the company's taxpayers' money.
Let's discuss the golden share on U.S. Steel. What happened is the Japanese Nippon Steel made a list of 12 promises. How do you make sure after they buy the company, they live up to their exact 12 promises? You say, look, we'll have a golden share. And what was the golden share? 12 promises. Live up to what you said, you can buy the company. You don't live up to what you said, the government's going to make you live up to what you've said. This is Donald Trump's way of thinking, which is make people do what they say, make them live up to what they say, and make sure we get the benefit of the bargain for the American taxpayer.
I'm sure you've read the Journal pushback already, the op-ed page. Once the government acquires a stake in Intel, politicians will have an incentive to keep pouring on subsidies so they wouldn't have to admit a mistake. This is corporate statism, and it rarely does end well.
Well, we were giving away the money. I mean, imagine this. Look, the Biden administration literally was giving Intel for free and giving TSMC money for free. And all these companies just giving them money for free. And Donald Trump turns that into saying, hey, We want equity for the money. If we're going to give you the money, we want a piece of the action for the American taxpayer. How could that not be smarter, better, and more important for the American taxpayer than just free money for $100 billion, trillion-dollar companies? Makes no sense. Donald Trump is fixing what Biden got completely, totally, and utterly wrong.
As somebody who's been around the capital markets for years, as you have, then I do wonder, how do you view this idea of state capitalism that's being introduced? I mean, you mentioned the golden share in U.S. Steel, the 10% potential stake in Intel, the 15% of the revenues that NVIDIA gets from selling chips in China, the $400 million in that rare earths company. I'm curious how you think about it, Howard, given, of course, your long career at the center of the capital markets for all those years. I think of you as a capitalist, but this doesn't quite sound like that.
All right, well, let's talk about the Japan deal. So Japan has offered to buy down their tariffs from 25% to 15%. They offered us $550 billion investment fund. And then Korea came in on top of it, $350 billion. So what are we going to do with those $900 billion? We are going to fix the infrastructure that China has competed away. What China does, and it's really very, very thoughtful, and it's an attack. They sell product here for half of what it costs. So they put the capitalists out of business, put us out of business in rare earth magnets. We invented rare earth magnets. Why don't we make them anymore? Because they sell them for half the value, and we don't have them, and then they hold it over you, right? Like a giant axe. And we've got to fix ourselves. We've got to make semiconductors. We've got to build pipelines. We've got to build nuclear. We've got to have the infrastructure to help our national security and our economic security. And that's what Donald Trump is bringing to America. When he leaves office, he is going to leave America safe, secure, and economically powerful. And if you don't do that, and you don't handle the Chinese risk and the risk that these people are attacking us, and basically, we don't make generic pharmaceuticals. Imagine that. If we had conflict with China, what are we going to do? Ask them to send us antibiotics? We've got to build those things in America, and that's what Donald Trump is doing. He's fixing what other administrations got wrong. Is that a new form of capitalism, then? I mean, is that kind of do you describe it that way, then? This idea that the U.S. is going to own specific stakes in particularly companies that have particular national security concern or others? That's kind of a new way of approaching things, isn't it? Oh, it's a completely new way of approaching it. But remember, it's not our money. The Japanese have offered $550 billion towards our.
Well, you're talking about
security.
Those funds, right? I'm talking about the equity investments. But yeah. I mean, you and I have gone back around about this, too. And you've said Trump, the president, is going to be able to decide exactly what he wants to do with all that money, the $550 billion from Japan. They've said it's probably mostly loan guarantees for companies that are already operating here that are Japanese companies. I mean, do you feel like you're on the same?
No. We're on the same page. We talk to them. You are? Look, every night and every morning we're finishing the documents, but we are on the same page. What's going to happen is the investments in America are for the benefit of the economic and national security of the United States of America, driven by Donald Trump, the only person who could have come up with these kind of ideas to make sure we protect America is Donald Trump. He understands business. We made the deal with Japan. We made the deal with Korea. It is their money that's going to create these investments so that we can build the pipelines, we can build the nuclear, we can build semiconductors, we can build pharmaceuticals in America to protect America. This is Donald Trump's strategy, and it is amazing, and it is the most fun to work for him because we are doing things that nobody's ever thought of doing to protect America.
You mentioned you're working on the documents. When do you think the market can get its hands on written documentation on the deals with Japan, UK, Vietnam, Korea? Is that how long ago? How far away is that?
Well, these are kind of weeks away for the Japan and Korea model, but the other models are set. I mean, you already have Vietnam has agreed to open its market. These countries have agreed to open their market. They bring down their tariffs. It's not that you're not going to find a big, long, 250-page trading agreement. It's very simple. Bring down your tariffs to zero. Open the market to American exporters so that we can finally sell our agriculture overseas, finally sell our seafood overseas, finally sell our beef overseas. I mean, our producers have Stockholm Syndrome. We've been so beaten for decades that we don't even know what it's like to sell internationally. Finally, Donald Trump is smashing open these markets. The European market won't buy our cars. Korea won't buy our cars. Japan won't buy our cars. But they sure as heck sell us cars. That is changing under Donald Trump. And that is what's so much fun about these trade deals. He's opening their markets for our ability to export. And he's got it asymmetrically. They are going to pay us to sell to us, the great American consumer.
And I know we're going to talk about the $550 billion in the future as well, and certainly looking forward to seeing some of the language around it. Let me come back to the U.S. and sort of the whole idea again of enhancing our competition and U.S. champions. I'm curious, Mr. Secretary, how you view the recent move by Union Pacific to acquire Norfolk Southern, the idea of creating a nationwide rail. They put it under the guise of, hey, this is going to be a national champion. This is beneficial for the industrial policy of the U.S. How do you view that rail consolidation and whether we should see it and whether we should see even more of it?
Well, we all know that the issue is there was Western railroads and there was Eastern railroads, and they had this interchange in the middle of the country that tended to take 2 or 3 days to change the rail from one company to another company's rail system, and that should be made more efficient. Whether that should be through a merger or in any other way, I'll leave that to the regulators and the overseers. That's the proper way to do that for that kind of acquisition. But the concept of making it more efficient to get across the country is obviously something that we applaud. How they get there, I don't know. That's not our issue. But the fact is, we need to have a more efficient rail system for cross-continental rail.
Yeah, I mean, because, you know, the STB requires a proven economic benefit. So you're going to stay out of it, you think? I mean, the Trump administration typically gets involved, it would seem, in all these kinds of issues. And there seemed to be an implicit sense that they were supportive of this consolidation. Is that not the case?
Well, I think from my perspective, I'm going to let the experts at the STB and the others weigh in themselves. That's not my place to weigh in. But we all understand that we need to have an efficient transcontinental rail system. That is obviously something that we all applaud.
All right, let me come back to something quickly that you I think at least the Treasury Secretary indicated you should get or should have something to say about, and that's this story that NVIDIA is looking to sell a new chip, again, less powered obviously than what they sell here, but not the H20, a different type of chip to the Chinese. He said on Squawk Box earlier that as the Treasury Secretary that that be through commerce. So I'm curious what your view is on this idea they're working on this new AI chip for China.
Well, look, NVIDIA is a $4 trillion company for a reason, because Jensen has always tried to sell more things. I mean, the guy is fantastic. So the fact that he comes up and says, I have an H20 chip, I'm trying to sell those, but those are like 4 generations back. I'd like to have a newer one that I can sell to China. Of course he would like to sell a new chip to China. And, you know, I'm sure he's pitching the president all the time. I've listened to him pitch the president. And the president listens to our great technology companies, and he'll decide how he wants to play it. But the fact that Jensen is pitching a new chip shouldn't surprise anybody. Of course he is.
He's good at it too, isn't he?
Oh, baby, he is great. You can't be worth $4 trillion and not be amazing.
Mr. Secretary, there's a lot we didn't get to, tariff revenue and more, but we'll save it for next time. Thanks for coming on. Good to see you.
Great to see you.
Secretary Lutnick. Still to come this morning, we'll get to some movers, including Depot, kicking off a busy earnings season for consumer retail. We'll get to Palo Alto.